Ladies and gentlemen, we usually do these shows on Friday when we talk about the Baltimore Ravens, but I think we need an emergency podcast because it's time to hit the panic button for the Baltimore Ravens 2025 season. I'm joined by the man Samuel Njoku, Ravens Talk Pod, doing a lot of great stuff over there. You guys should be sure to follow him if you're on Twitter. I've tagged his little at in the comments. So we got a lot to talk about. Samuel, thank you for taking the time.
Oh, thank you for having me once again. Talking some Ravens football under not so great circumstances, but still fun to talk football anyway.
Of course, it's always a lot of fun, and we do have certainly a lot to break down, though. And again, we mentioned kind of hitting the panic button, and the Ravens have so many problems to begin with, and then you add in the injuries, and you add in one particular injury to quarterback Lamar Jackson. We found out with that hamstring injury, he will probably most definitely be out for this week against Houston and maybe 2 or 3 more weeks after that. Now, the Ravens do have the week 7 bye kicked in there, but they said it could be up to 3 weeks. Again, that probably means 2 games. What does that mean when you add that component into what has already been a mess with the 1-3 Ravens?
It's a nightmare scenario, honestly, for the Ravens who start 1-3. Have they been 3-1 or even 2-2? This may not hurt as much, but considering that they are in deep water, 2 games back from the Pittsburgh Steelers, who may not be as dominant as in years past, they are still finding ways to win football games. They got to have Lamar Jackson back, so hopefully Cooper Rush able to stave off the losses until Lamar Jackson returns.
For sure. I mean, let's talk about Cooper Rush for a minute because he was 4-1 with Dallas a few years ago when he stepped in for Dak Prescott. But you look at a situation now where Derrick Henry only has 8 carries, and outside of the opening game, it's 3.7 yards per carry. Maybe he's not the same player. The offensive line has gotten worse. Do you think the Ravens are set up to possibly go out and beat the Texans? Now, the Rams seems unrealistic considering they're one of the best teams in the league. But you look at a 1-3 Houston team. Can the Ravens go out and win that game this coming Sunday?
They can. If the running game can get going, they're going to have to lean heavy into the run, something that they probably should have been doing throughout the season anyway. But if they can lean into the run game, the offensive line can get their run blocks in order. They have what it takes to beat the Houston Texans. I think the scariest part of the Houston Texans are those pass rushes they have on both sides of the line. But if they can have the run game get going, keep those pass rushers from having an opportunity to get to their quarterback and kind of keep them from pinning their ears back and going after the QB, then they can certainly get a win in Houston. And even though the Rams game is, a tough matchup, they still have the talent on the defensive side of the ball that they can get it together in 2 weeks' time. Maybe they can make a game of it against the Rams as well. It will be at home in Baltimore.
Just put the link, everybody, in the comments. I know we have a lot of viewers currently on Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it these days. So if you guys want to call in, talk some football with me and Samuel, we would love to have you on because there is a lot to talk about with the Baltimore Ravens at the current time. Samuel, we're going to break down the entire catastrophe that has been the Baltimore Ravens' first 4 games. But mainly, again, let's exclude the injuries for a minute because that has been a problem, but only one kind of minute problem. What is kind of the first thing that stands out to you about why this has been a 1-3 start for the Ravens, which is uncharacteristic to the team they've been in the past?
Yeah, it's been the fact that they've played really good teams. I mean, you hate to say that, the Bills are a great team, the Chiefs are a great team, the Lions are a great team. Each of them have their own matchup problems for a defense. And if you can't get to the quarterback, you're not going to win those games. There's some top-tier quarterbacks. And if you give them time in the pocket, they will let you play. You saw that against Kansas City. You saw that against the Detroit Lions, who, even though they have some trouble protecting the interior of the offensive line, no Madubuike, no chance of getting towards the quarterback, especially if you're doubling your second-best interior pass rusher in Travis Jones. So it's all about the defense. The defensive front needs to improve. Lots of injuries there. No Broderick Washington, no Manny Madubuike. He's out for the season, maybe even longer. Kyle Van Noy still maybe a game or 2 away from returning as well. So yeah, you're asking a lot of young guys. CJ Okoye, somebody who we didn't expect to play at all this season, played in week 4 game against the Chiefs. So it's just about having enough bodies out there to penetrate the line of scrimmage. Luckily for them, they're having a Houston Texans team who has all types of problems stopping anyone from getting to the quarterback. So if there's a time for the defense to step up, this would be that game.
For sure. I mean, Houston has one of, if not the worst offensive line in the league in terms of protecting C.J. Stroud and putting him in a position to succeed. But with that said, the Ravens have 4 sacks in 4 games. They forced 2 takeaways. Both came against a 40-year-old Joe Flacco at quarterback. And I think that, frankly, that has been what has been most shocking is, like, I looked at the schedule and I'm like, okay, You got the Bills in there, you got the Lions in there, you got the Chiefs in there. But I always thought they're saying that about the Ravens too. Like, they're going into the season and they're saying, shoot, we got the Baltimore Ravens on the schedule. But they don't seem as fearful of an opponent. They're not as physical. They're not as demanding. They get dominated in the trenches. They don't execute on the plays on fourth down. I truly think that, like, the Kansas City game was rough across the board. That was just a really, really bad game. But you look at the Lions game, the Bills game, they dominated for most of it. I feel like the Ravens aren't far off from being 2-2 or 3-1 right now. It's just about the Lions going 3 for 3 on fourth down. The Ravens not executing on a 4th and goal from the 1. Stuff like that where that's coaching, I think. And certain teams come up with the biggest plays in the biggest moments. And we're going to talk about, just the coaching situation. Is Harbaugh still the right guy for the job? I feel like after the Ravens lost to the Bills, there was like no panic, right? Okay, we've seen this before. We've seen them blow leads early in the season. They dominated the game for 3.5 quarters. They looked invincible. Like, they looked like they were going to be untouchable and that no one in the NFL could come close to them. That's how they looked, at least offensively. Then all of a sudden, the momentum starts to ramp up again. You dominate the Browns, though I don't think in hindsight they played as well as we maybe thought they did. You played Detroit. They played an incredible game, so we thought maybe it was a statement from them. But now you see another loss for the Ravens. It feels like we've officially entered scary territory. Like, what feels different?
Nothing feels different, in my opinion. It's just that you got three teams that are top tier Super Bowl contenders, and it's early. So you're playing these 3 teams early. There's no middle ground. There's no, okay, we played a tough opponent. 4 bad teams that the Ravens are going to dominate. 1 tough opponent. 4 bad teams later that the Ravens dominate. The Ravens are getting it out of the way early, so you can't mask your deficiencies against great football teams. You can't mask your deficiencies against great football coaches. So you get out coached on primetime, people are going to talk about it. You get outplayed in primetime, people are going to talk about it. So I think it's a mixture of, the players aren't performing well, but a lot of this is coaching, as you mentioned. Todd Monken, for some reason, just doesn't, know how to play call and situational football play calling is pretty poor. 3rd and short, 4th and short, keeping Derrick Henry off the field. This is something that we've seen time and time again, starting to bite him in the butt a little bit. And we know the play calling of Zachary Orr, he's inexperienced in that regard. You've seen players out of position lots of times. Some of that is on the players, but a lot of that is a coach having to put you in positions to play good football. We saw that with Mike McDonald. He had a lot worse talent under his belt and still had a top 5, top 3 defense year after year. So Zachary Rose under a lot of pressure. Todd Monken was put on some pressure by his head coach, John Harbaugh, who is also under a lot of pressure. The heat is hot in his seat in his tenure here in Baltimore.
Is it, Samuel? I mean, I feel like it should be, right? But I'm looking at the NBA, and they're firing coaches after they win championships left and right. Nick Nurse, Frank Vogel. I don't know if you're a big NBA guy, Mike Budenholzer, Michael Malone for the Nuggets. Just recently, in baseball, Bruce Bochy was just let go. 2 seasons removed from a World Series with the Texas Rangers. The Eagles got rid of Doug Peterson a few years after. I mean, how long is John Harbaugh going to hang on to that 2012 season and keep his job, because essentially Ray Lewis led that team in his final season? Like, how long is it going to be 1 Super Bowl 13 years ago and you have a Lifetime Achievement Award?
Your guess is as good as mine. I do remember one of my first couple of years being a beat writer for CBS Baltimore and Examiner.com. We had a news conference when they were trying to hire a coach to replace Brian Billick, and they chose John Harbaugh. And Steve Bisciotti made a point to explain to us, as well as at the time Ozzie Newsome, that their goal is to have a coach that's going to be here for the long haul, through thick and thin. As long as he's out there doing what he can, the best he can to win football games, they are going to stick by that guy. So that's been really what we've seen from Steve Bisciotti the last 20 years with John Harbaugh. Yeah, he won a championship in 2012, about 4 years after becoming a head coach. And since then, he's had some tough goals at both the postseason and the regular season in big moments. So I don't know that answer. I don't know if this will be the year that they decide to move on from him. I can tell you that is a family-oriented program. It's less business, more family in nature. Eric DaCosta and John Harbaugh, we know, live very close together. They're neighbors. They get along very well. Both of those guys, they report to the owner. It's not like Harbaugh reports to EDC. EDC reports to Steve Bisciotti. Both of those guys report to Steve Bisciotti. So I don't think that friendship will have much to do in the ways of potential keeping Harbaugh or losing one way or another. I can tell you that his seat is as hot as it has ever been. John Harbaugh made a note that this wasn't a Super Bowl or bust season, but I've mentioned it time and time again throughout the year. This is indeed that. And he's starting to feel the effects of that after this 1-3 start.
Guys, we got a ton of live viewers. Please be sure to call in and quickly shout out a few. Alexander Soundwave, sorry about your Ravens. Yeah, I'm sorry too. Thanks for commenting, Alexander. Please be sure to call in if you're interested. My birds are better, talking about the Eagles. Yeah, they are better. And it's funny that comment is there because I think what's interesting about the Eagles is I think they're 22nd in offensive yardage, 30th in terms of defensive yardage allowed, and they're 4-0. And I feel like they're the exact opposite of the Ravens. They're not making the big plays. They're not flashy. They're not, have all the highlights and all that types of stuff. But what they do is they just find ways to win. They execute in the biggest moments, and they're never out of a football game. They don't let one mistake lead into the next. It feels like they're the exact opposite team as the Ravens, and they have, frankly, opposite records.
Yeah, and when you mention is coaching the problem, this is exactly what we're talking about. Are the Ravens a better football team overall than the Philadelphia Eagles? Yes. Are they a better football team overall than the Pittsburgh Steelers? Yeah, on paper, both of those teams pale in comparison to the Ravens, as do the Chiefs, as do the Bills. But coaching has routinely found ways to be a reason for the losses. We saw it against the Bills. We saw it against the Lions. The Ravens knew that the Lions were going to run the football. There was no game plan, at least an effective one, to stop it. You can't put it on the players. I mean, Marlon Humphrey's been to the Pro Bowl. Kyle Hamilton's been to the Pro Bowl. They didn't forget how to play football? No. Roquan Smith, we traded up to get him, to bring him here to Baltimore from Chicago. He didn't suddenly learn how to not play football all of a sudden. So,
Emil, that's where I feel like I have to disagree with you, though. I mean, at some point, like, it's $100 million for Roquan. We saw some regression last year. Humphrey's just been a disaster. Do you really think it's coaching, or are these guys just getting worse?
Is Roquan the same player he was 3 years ago? No, same with Marlon Humphrey, but you got to know what your players can do and what they can't do. You can't leave Roquan on the island by himself when you know he doesn't know how to cover anymore. Same with Marlon Humphrey. You can't put him one-on-one with Xavier Worthy when you know he's had trouble year after year stopping a speedy receiver. So it's up to you as a coach to put these guys in position to make those plays. Is Roquan worth the $100 million you spent on him right now? Probably not. Is Marlon Humphrey probably in his last year in Baltimore? Probably. But you got who you got. You got to do what you can as a coach to put these guys in the best position to make those plays. If you don't think they can make those plays, well, sub them out. Jake Hummel played decent in Roquan Smith's absence due to injury. And you got TJ Tampa, who's playing very well now, opposite some guys like Chidobe Awuzie, who's also playing well. So, and you didn't put Jair Alexander on the field last week because he didn't play well. Do the same with these guys. If you don't think that they're the answer, it's fine if you want to get rid of them. But if you're going to put them on the field, put them in position to be their best player.
Yeah, a lot of the problems are coaching. I mean, everyone likes to talk about what John Harbaugh could do for this Ravens team, and that's fine. Like, he's led him to a lot of winning seasons. 12 wins, just kind of looking back, 12, 13, 10, 8, 11, 14, 10, 9, 8, random 5-win season of 15, 10, 8, and then the years with Flacco where he had, if I want to get that correct, I think it's 5 straight winning seasons to open his career in Baltimore. But since that Super Bowl run with Ray Lewis and Joe Flacco and all that, I mean, in that time, John Harbaugh, 3, 4, 5, 6, he won 10 playoff games or 9 playoff games in his first 5 years as a head coach. He since has won 4 playoff games. And so you have to wonder how much of that was the Ray Lewis, Ed Reed culture. And John Harbaugh has not been able to carry that through. He's had the talented teams. He's had the best team in 2019. He's had the best team in 2023. I'd argue he had the AFC's best team last year, and they just haven't executed. And it's unfortunate. And now you look at the season where a lot of people are comparing Lamar Jackson this season to what Joe Burrow was last year, just trying to do it all with a defense that is incapable of helping him out. But to me, I feel like the offense has had its own problems, Samuel. I mean, like, they look perfect, except for the fumble from Derrick Henry. They look perfect against the Buffalo Bills. After week 3 against the Lions, it felt like Lamar was viewed as like the victim. But again, since that week 1 game, they really scored 17 points against Cleveland when you account what the defense did, how the special team set them up. I feel like they scored a true 17 points, heavily limited against Detroit, and then they were a disaster last week. Like, for as much as we want to talk about the defense, like, the offense has not been able to will its way to victory either. Can you at least agree with that?
Oh, yeah, of course. And it starts with the offensive line. I think the Buffalo Bills, their defensive front isn't special at all. I mean, Ed Oliver is having a decent season, but they're really not known for their front seven. You got the Browns, who have the best front seven in football. The Lions of Aiden Hutchinson. You got the Chiefs of Chris Jones, and Steve Spagnuolo is going to find a way to penetrate whatever you do. So the offensive line is what is going to stir the trenches of this team, both on offense and defense, will dictate where this team goes. And the Ravens are winning and getting yardage and getting points despite all that. You saw that kind of go in on itself against the Kansas City Chiefs, but you got to realize a lot of those times the Ravens were in 3rd and short, 4th and short situations where they could have easily handed the ball off to Derrick Henry or done something through the run to get things going. Remember, the Chiefs were having all types of problems stopping them running. For whatever reason, Todd Monken once again got away from the run game in the Kansas City Chiefs game. So I think that says more about what this team is about moving forward. I am not concerned once Lamar Jackson come back if this team can put points on the board. I think the offense is just too good all the way around. Besides any other injuries that unfold in that offense, I think the offense will be okay. But yeah, you're right. So far, this offensive line has been the issue, and it's kept them from, putting more points on the board than we saw in Week 1 against the Buffalo Bills.
For sure, guys. All-time high viewership here on the show between YouTube and Twitter right now. So if you guys want to call in, comment, Samuel and I would love to kind of have a discussion with you about the Ravens. So Samuel, I feel like you just kind of answered it, but I do want to touch on this a little bit. Say Lamar Jackson is healthy, which he's going to be healthy again at some point. Has he lost a step? I mean, I know you meant when you were on my show last, we talked about how you can't expect Lamar to replicate the season he had last year. But even with 10 total touchdowns and 0 turnovers through 3 games, I wasn't really pleased with the performance. I grade the positions every week. I gave him an A against the Bills, a C+ against the Browns, a C+ against the Lions, and a D this past week, which that's another discussion about, Lamar not being able to get past Spags defense and with Mahomes on the other sideline and all of that. He's not running as much. There's less read options. It feels like things are different. Is it time to start worrying about Lamar Jackson?
Nah, no, not at all. I think some of it is, maybe his hamstring has been worrying him for quite some time. I've heard reports to that effect, although I've not been able to confirm that one way or another. But this is a guy who just doesn't seem to trust his offensive line. He's trying to do too much back there. Teams are noticing it. The Detroit Lions, I think, did a really good job of keeping a spy on him. And Lamar Jackson, if he felt any type of pressure, panicked because he knew that offensive line was not going to be able to keep him upright for long periods of time. Now, some of that in that Lions game, I think, was on Lamar because the offensive line of the Ravens did a pretty decent job, all things considered, of protecting him. But when you've seen practice upon practice and game upon game of your offensive line laying you down and you see a spy there, you're going to want to try and test them. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. You're kind of 50-50 on that regard. And coupled with that, with the fact that he may have been a little bit dinged up prior to that contest, I could see why. But overall, I think Lamar Jackson's too good of a quarterback. And couple that with the fact that Derrick Henry is still a force when used properly, hint, Todd Monken, then I think you still have an offense that can get the job done.
For sure. Just muting it right there because you don't want to have to hear the Alexa notifications, the beauty of broadcasting from home. But yeah, I mean, you mentioned Derrick Henry. He's 24th in attempts and 3rd in yards per carry in terms of running backs with 15 or more attempts this season. I mean, look, I felt like the narrative around Derrick Henry shifted quickly. He went from unstoppable in the first 3.5 quarters to Buffalo. Then he fumbles against the Bills, fumble against the Browns, wasn't recovered by the defense, but then fumbles against the Lions. And immediately Ravens fans were like, nope, don't trust him anymore. It feels like that's a Todd Monken and John Harbaugh, I believe, too. He had 8 carries against Kansas City and wasn't even getting the ball once the game, a 1-possession game, a 2-possession game. And so it was another classic example of the Ravens panicking. I mean, why isn't Baltimore using Henry? And clearly the rushing game taking a gigantic hit in the last 3 games, the offense has suffered.
They're doing too much. I really have no other way to describe it, that they're trying too much to be cute in the red zone. They're trying too much to be cute on passing downs. Oh, it's a passing down. We don't want Derrick Henry out there just as tell as a threat with the passing game, so let's keep him out there. Derrick Henry on the football field is a threat every time. Unless it's 3rd and 15, and he's tired, I don't want to see Derrick Henry on the sidelines. He's too valuable of a piece.
He's like Steph Curry off the ball. It's like half of what he does without even the ball in his hands is just as valuable.
Exactly. And that's like if you're running the football and the team knows you're running the football, oh, let's just, put another running back in place of Lamar Jackson because we know we're not throwing the football. Let's take the threat away. No, you keep your best players on the football field time in and time again. So I think that the Ravens hopefully learn from their mistake. I mean, we say hopefully. This has been going on for 3 years straight. Hopefully the Ravens learn to keep their best players out there. Maybe get a guy like Keaton Mitchell now that you don't have Lamar Jackson to help with the running game a little bit. The Ravens will need to lean on this heavily for the next 2 or 3 games to help keep this team afloat, maybe at the 500 mark before Lamar Jackson returns and hopefully take them to the promised land.
Alexander Soundwave, do you all think the Ravens will sneak into a wild card spot? We're going to get into that in just a minute. We're kind of just breaking down this roster at the current time. We talked about the coaching a little bit, and so many people, including myself, including you, are complaining about the coordinators. And there's obviously some validity to that. But First it's Wink Martindale, you fire him. Then it's Greg Roman, you fire him. Now it's all of a sudden Zach Orr and Todd Monken. What's the common denominator? It's John Harbaugh. John Harbaugh is the common denominator. And so, again, we talked about kind of these lifetime achievement awards. At what point are the Ravens going to just let this go? Like, it's time to fish or cut bait here. I think that the Ravens I don't think they could do this with John Harbaugh and Lamar Jackson. The combination just clearly has not worked. And so, look, you could also look at John Harbaugh and say he hired Mike Macdonald, and now Ravens fans all love Mike Macdonald and wish that he stayed. Harbaugh has been consistent. He's led winning seasons, but eventually has he reached his ceiling? And I think a lot of people could say yes. And so now you're in a situation where you're injury prone, you're 1-3, and you're just kind of dead, it feels like. And so that's what you get. And I think at this firing Harbaugh, they're not going to fire him now. Lamar's going to be hurt for the next 2 games, so you're not going to see the Ravens make that change. Sam, but my question is, look, we could talk about this. Say the Ravens make a miraculous run. Say they win one of their next 2 games. They're 2-4 going into the bye. Lamar comes back, Roquan's back, Marlon's back, and this team just flips the switch, even without Matabike and all that. Say that happens, and they're in the playoffs, and they're a 10-11 win team, whatever. They have to go on the road, fine. What's going to change? Because I feel like Sunday, what we saw against Kansas City was maybe another indicator that this team, whether that's Lamar, whether that's the offensive line, whether that's the coaches, whether it's some combination, they can't get it done against good teams, particularly Kansas City and particularly at Arrowhead. So, at what point are we just it doesn't even matter? Because you have to keep that in the back of your mind, too. Even if the Ravens get there, they have not shown any reason to believe that they can do it in the biggest games.
You don't think there are players on that roster that feel the same way as you do? I'm sure there are a couple of players, if not more, in that locker room who feel the same way as you. So I've had this same mantra throughout the season. I'll continue to have it no matter what happens. If John Harbaugh doesn't win a championship this year, he's got to go. There's just no way about it. You said it yourself. That combination between John Harbaugh and Lamar isn't working. That leadership, there's a void there or something. Maybe he's lost the voice of the team. Because, again, he's been there for 20 years. Not many
he's lost the locker room. I mean, Samuel, you've been covering the Ravens for a very long time. When is the last time that you have seen the Ravens lack physicality the way that they have and get dominated like this in the trenches? Have you ever seen this?
Maybe 2017, Brian Billick, his last leg against the Patriots. I've seen something like that, but it has been quite a while. Not 2017, 2007, since I've seen something like this. Yeah, it's bad. It's bad. The game, the fans don't want to admit it, but that team gave up midway through the game. The Chiefs took the fight out of the Baltimore Ravens, and kudos to them for doing it. But this is something that's probably not going to get restructured in a day or a week. This is something that the coaches and players are going to have to find within themselves to dig out themselves, because you don't have your Lamar Jackson anymore. So even more of a tumultuous situation, considering that they just got their butts whooped in Arrowhead.
No, for sure. And I think that now you just have to look ahead to the future, and you got to think, look, you can't change the past. As I say that, though, I do want to touch on the past for a minute. How much of this do you think is the Buffalo game? You mentioned John maybe losing the locker room. Do you think that Buffalo game, holding a 15-point lead with, 4 minutes to go, and then losing, do you think there was any bit of not this again, and a sense of maybe a lack of care from the players since, where it's this just isn't working, and that's how the team has maybe crumbled? Do you think that's a possibility, that Buffalo game has maybe shifted everything? Because they've looked different on the field too since that Henry fumble and since the collapse.
Yeah, I could see that, creeping into your mind. Okay, well, while we're the best team in the league, we put up 40 points on a team that everybody expects to be in the thick of it, and we still found a way to lose. Can this be the same thing over and over again? And then you go to the Browns game and you kind of dominate them, even though, the defense helped you out a ton with that, and Joe Flacco gave you some favors as well. So you probably can leave it out there thinking, okay, well, we can bounce back. We've been 1-1 before. And then the Lions game, they punch you in the mouth. I mean, they dominated them in the trenches. And then to go back, leave your home, go to Arrowhead where you've had problems before, and just get absolutely destroyed. Injuries upon injuries. We still haven't heard about Nate Wiggins, his elbow injury. You lose your QB. It's just
one after another. It's oh my
crazy.
Goodness.
It was insane. So you're human at the end of the day. You're not just a number on a jersey. So I do expect there to be some mental lapses for this team that they'll need to overcome. And I think Houston's a good game for them. I think Houston will be a good test for the O-line, and it'll be a good test for that defense to try and get out there and get something done. But, it doesn't get any easier come LA Rams. So whew,
Yeah,
tough.
at this point, you have no margin for error when you start 1-3 and you have this kind of injuries. The road to victory here, Eagles channel. To be fair, the 3 losses to the Bills, Lions, and Chiefs, 3 teams the Eagles will beat this season. Okay, and maybe they will. I mean, they've won 19, 20 straight games with Jalen Hurts at quarterback, so
Yeah.
who knows? And then here, and yes, they could sneak in as a wild card. It's so easy to say, I feel like, on the outside looking in, but this team has so many problems. Clearly, the talent on paper, it just hasn't translated. And then there's the injuries, and I finally want to touch on that. Matabike, I don't even want to touch on that. It breaks my heart that he could not be back ever, or at least for a very long time. So he's certainly out for the season. Broderick Washington's on IR. You mentioned Roquan Smith. Marlon Humphrey's hurt. Nate Wiggins is hurt. Ronnie Stanley's hurt. Lamar Jackson's hurt. It is just one after another building on top of each other. And now all of a sudden, now you have rookies. My guy Jay Higgins may now finally be getting some decent playing time along with Jake Hummel and some of the others on this Ravens roster. But yeah, I mean, of their 22 starters last year on offense and defense, according to the Dominique Foxworth show, they missed 7 games combined last year among their 22 starters, and only Nate Wiggins, he was the only one to miss multiple games last year with injuries. So the Ravens were lucky the last 2 years. They didn't have the injury bug creep in. They were the best team in football, the most talented team in football. They had good postseason seeding and a prime position to just go and take what was for the taking, and instead they didn't. They didn't make a Super Bowl in those 2 years, and now you sit in this situation. So it really makes you question a lot when you are the best team in football and then don't capitalize, and that's just kind of another indicator that maybe the coaching is just not there. Let's look ahead, though. You're 1-3. Burrow's out for the season. The Browns are just an abomination. The Steelers are 3-1. We'll see what happens there. I don't think they're a great team. They've had a pretty easy schedule so far. Say the Ravens go 1-1 their next 2 games, or 2-4 at the bye. I think that seems realistic. Is there hope when Lamar, Smith, Wiggins, Humphrey, these guys return for the week 8 time, and then you got the Bears, the Dolphins, the Vikings? It gets easier, I feel like, at that point. Is there hope at that point?
Yeah, I think the road to victory said, could they sneak in as a wild card? They could absolutely win the division. In fact, they're still the favorites to win the division. If you go to Caesars or any of the major betting spots, the Ravens are still favored to win this division. That's because, as you mentioned, no Joe Burrow, the Browns are the Browns, and the Steelers are just taking advantage of poor teams similar to what they did in 2024. So, yeah, the Ravens could definitely pull it together. It's up to the coaching staff and the players to realize that. I think the number 1 seed is probably out of the question now, but you can still get a home playoff game. And if you get a home playoff game and you get healthy and you figure out and you correct your mistakes, again, it's still September. So you still have time to correct your errors and go into the postseason and see what happens. The Ravens won a championship in 2012, and they did not look at it like a playoff team at all. They had just got destroyed by the Washington Commanders. And, we thought that, there's no shot this team is fighting for a playoff spot, let alone a championship, and they end up winning the whole thing. So definitely time to get the job done, to have one of the best QBs in the league if you can come back and stay healthy. Sure, but, we've been in this situation before. We've seen this movie before. Can John Harbaugh change in time? Can Zachary Orr learn how to call plays effectively in time? Can Todd Monken use Derrick Henry effectively in those short yardage situations and stop getting cute with the shotgun formations and the rolling over to the right to no one? That's going to be the questions that need answering, and we'll see what happens. But again, this should be all hands on deck. It's, DEFCON 1, because, again, the Ravens need to win a championship, or this coaching staff is going to go through some serious changes.
Samuel, in one last thing here before we wrap up, I think now we've entered the territory of, is this what the Ravens needed? And hear me out. I know this sounds crazy. You have all the injuries. You have all of this. You're essentially on life support on September 30th, right? We just said we're hitting a panic button. You should not be doing that on September 30th. And part of that is the injuries. But if the Ravens can get healthy, if they can stay alive during this stretch and stay somewhat in contention, you mentioned how weak the AFC North is. I think a lot of these teams right now, they're 3-1, 2-2. The Patriots, the Jaguars, the Colts, they are going to fall off much quicker than some may expect. I really do think there is going to be an opening if the Ravens can be 2-4 and then get their guys healthy for week 8 at home against the Bears, and just go full throttle. And if that's the case, maybe this is exactly what the Ravens needed. Because I'm not saying that the moment isn't less big if you're the underdog, but Lamar Jackson has gone in and been a favorite in his last 4 playoff games. The one against Buffalo, the one against Kansas City. He's been a favorite in all 4 games this year. And it hasn't been on Lamar for a lot of them. It was on Lamar on Sunday. He was a critical reason why the Ravens did not come up big. But maybe this team needs to benefit from being the underdog. I mean, they've had home field advantage. It hasn't worked. So maybe going in as the 6th seed with no expectation, but getting hot at the right time and getting healthy at the right time could be what propels them to a Super Bowl. Philadelphia was 2-2 last year, the road to victory. All right. They were done. I was completely down on the Eagles. I was like, fire Sirianni at the week 5 bye. And then they flipped something. Can the Ravens flip that, get hot at the right time, and go on and win a Super Bowl as not the consensus favorite? And I think that is where the positivity should lie for Baltimore Ravens fans.
You kind of stole my thunder. I mean, I have a show coming out tomorrow that's going to be saying just about that. This is literally worst case scenario for the rest of the football league, in my opinion. If the Ravens can get out of their own butt, if they can get out of their own way, figure out what's not working, stop, using players that you're just fans of and want to prove people wrong, get out of this notion of having to be too cute, get players healthy, get your mind right, have a goal to push for something. Don't think you just deserve it because you're the best. You have to go out there and earn it. This is definitely a team you did not want to see get things humming. So, yeah, they can certainly flip a switch. We've seen John Harbaugh do this way back in 2012 with a roster that was – we heard the word mutiny at times. The roster did not like Harbaugh, and he found a way to turn that switch. If anybody can do it, as much as I've been against Harbaugh for what he's done the last 3 years, he can certainly get this job done. This Ravens team is not out of it. I know people are counting this team for dead. Even if they're 1-5, don't be surprised that the Ravens are fighting for a spot come week 17, week 18, because on paper, they're still the best team in the league.
Peter Schrager said it a few years ago, and the Ravens were 6-5 in 2020, and all of a sudden they were starting to get hot. And that team was never great anyway. But here's what he said. He said, when the Ravens get hot, he said, the last thing the AFC ever wants to see is the Ravens find their mojo. And so if they can find their mojo and sneak in, it's a whole other game in the playoffs. The Ravens know that firsthand. And so maybe now they can be on the receiving end of some of the coolest moments in the postseason. And look, I think that's where the positivity has to lie. Big game coming up against the Houston Texans. Samuel, real quick before we wrap up, any expectations for that game? What does Baltimore need to do to come out with a victory, particularly now that we know that Cooper Rush will probably be shooting up a quarterback?
Run the ball, protect your quarterback. The best way to do that, obviously, opposite of just blocking correctly, is to put the pressure on the run game to get things going. Once you do that, the defense has to adjust. That gives Cooper Rush time to use the play action and carve that Houston Texans defense apart. But you have to establish your run. If you start passing the ball and the run game is ineffective, the Houston Texans will win. I don't care who's in the center. That defense is too good to get into the quarterback. Protect Cooper Rush.
Guys, we have a lot of live viewers here. We appreciate you guys tuning in. And yes, for that game as well, Samuel, I think part of running the football, it's also giving your defense a little bit of a break. The best way for your defense to not allow a lot of points is for them to only be on the field for 25 minutes. The Ravens have lost the time of possession in every one of their games this season because they haven't established the run enough where they could just dominate. And frankly, they've had too many explosive plays where they haven't been on the field enough. They're second or 31st, second worst in the NFL in terms of the total amount of plays. And so if they could just be more methodical, which they're going to have to be without Lamar Jackson, then I think the Ravens do have an opportunity to at least stay in the mix before Lamar gets healthy. And then who knows, as you mentioned, because that's when it can get really fun. Samuel Njoku, thank you so much for taking the time. And thank you so much, again, record-breaking viewership over on the Twitter side here today for our live streams. We cannot thank you guys enough. Thank you so much for tuning in. And Samuel, thank you. You need all the links. Check him out at Ravens Talk Pod, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok. There was a really cool guy on that TikTok account if you guys want to check him out as well. So, Samuel, we appreciate it. Thanks so much.
Thanks for having me, man. Appreciate it.
We're going to wrap things up here alongside Samuel Njoku of the Ravens Talk Pod, Locked On Ravens, Roundtable Sports, all that stuff. I'm your host, Chase Coburn, saying so long from Chase's Sports News.